What's up, guys? It's John Nelson. You are listening to the Starting Block Podcast. If you're new to our show, this, guys, is a show for complete athletic development. Our objective here is to give you guys the tools to win, whether you're the athlete, the parent, or the coach. If you're new to the show, welcome. Appreciate you joining. Thanks for stopping by. Our numbers are growing. We appreciate you sending in questions. We appreciate you listening, and you guys that have been listening for a while, sharing the show. So appreciate y'all bringing a friend. I'm going to go ahead and break down how our show operates. We are a little different than your standard podcast. So we actually have multiple episodes within the show. The first episode, like today, is going to be a Q&A, and that's a bi-weekly episode. It's where myself and my co-host, Chris Scarborough. What's up, sir? Good morning. Or I guess good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes.
Yeah. So this is where Chris and I will take the questions that you guys submit to us. Chris, where can they submit those questions, by the way?
info@startingblockpodcast.com.
Bingo. You can submit your questions there. And, guys, those can be related to anything related to athletic performance. That can be the training side of it, the strength, speed, agility, power, all that stuff, nutrition, rehab, the neuro stuff. We got a lot of questions from Dr. Jack Kruse episode as well. We got a lot of things related to light and all that type of good stuff. So those types of questions, if we can tackle it, we absolutely will. There are some of those questions that need to be answered by the experts, but hey, we'll tackle them if we can. So that's Q&A. The second episode you'll hear is our guest interview. That's the other bi-weekly episode. That is where we will bring in our guests, our colleagues and friends from across the country, across the pond, and they're going to share their tools for success, what they do with their clients, their patients, share a little bit about their systems, what they do to win. And that has actually just evolved into a network for our listeners and audience to connect with. And you guys can follow them on social. And if you live in other parts of the country, these are, coaches and therapists that you can actually connect with. And it's actually just kind of cool that it's ended up being like that. So we're pretty stoked about that. That's our guest interview. And then the last episode is going to be that Friday or Saturday episode where you basically get about 10 to 20 minutes of me ranting, or maybe it's a little guided wisdom. We got a couple of those coming down the pipeline here. It's a little bit more related to, a topic that maybe Chris and I experienced during the week. Maybe just a trend in our industries of, strength and kind of the rehab side of stuff. And there's something that maybe doesn't fall in line with a Q&A. So that's what those episode breakdowns look like. We do have a fee, and we ask you to pay your dues. Guys, we don't run ads. We don't charge anything for this. All we ask is that you share the show. If you got any value out of this, if you learned something, if we connected you with a great guest, guys, just please, give us a review and share the show. Bring us a friend and help us spread this. I think there's so much information out there that's it's basically information overload for athletes and parents and coaches these days with social media. And I would like to think that we are hopefully maybe one of those calming, happy medium voices that can help decipher through, quite frankly, a lot of the bullshit that's out there. That's kind of our objective. So we ask that you please share the show if you enjoyed it. That's it. So I think we got all the housekeeping out of the way, and let's go ahead and get rolling. Today is Q&A. So, Chris, what's on the table, man?
All right. So let's preface the question. This is someone who is referring back to a Jay Schroeder podcast. Now, I don't know if it was ours or another one that he was on.
Did you just call him Dre Schroeder?
I believe I did. So, yeah, Jay Schroeder. Let's correct that very quickly. So, if we were to, if you listen to what he says, he will say that we don't train athletes to be strong. We don't train them to be fast. We don't train them to possess endurance. Those things are byproducts of what we do. So, John, what is the difference then between preparing an athlete versus strength training an athlete, getting them stronger to play a sport? What is the difference? What does that mean?
Well, that is a good question. We could go multiple directions with that, I think. Let's do this. Why don't we start with just like the physical side of it first, right? And then we can kind of get into, all of the, I guess the other elements of pipes and things like that. So,
yes,
I think the easiest way to phrase this is, a lot of athletes are always concerned about their bench, squat, or deadlift. And just to make it super simple, well, those are power lifts. Those are called power lifting, power lifts. Like there's an actual sport, for those types of, exercises and stuff. And so although they may provide benefit, there's a whole separate sport for that. So
Yes.
at some point in time, how does that, getting better in that type of lift or movement actually help you excel anymore? And that is like literally, I think, the simplest way, you can phrase something, right? I mean,
Right.
Like there's still benefit to getting strong. We've talked about that, right? There's benefit to getting strong under a bar. There's benefit to going through, different speed drills and progressions and plyometrics and things like that, but they're all used as tools to, improve your actual athletic ability. And I think maybe people get confused because they think it improves the skill. And those are two totally separate things.
Right. Agreed. And it's funny you said that. You're talking about the bringing up the sport of powerlifting. There's a big leaderboard at the gym that I use, and there's a list of these powerlifters. And for anybody who knows, for anybody who has a total bench squat deadlift, if it's over 2,000, you're pretty stinking strong. Okay, that is an insanely strong human being. Well, there's multiple individuals on this leaderboard over 2,000, and there's actually a couple over 2,200. So these are some. This is a leaderboard of some.
Is this a like professional powerlifting facility?
Some of them are. Yes, yeah. There's some freaks in this place.
Yeah, those are some monster totals there.
But some of the points I bring up I train a lot of baseball players, and I point out to them that, okay, what do you think almost everyone on that leaderboard has in common? And they're like, I don't know. They're all strong. I said, well, yes, that. But guess what they can't do? What is that? And I said, throw 80 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. At least not without hurting themselves. And so, once again, is there, certainly these people have, the kids I train, yes, they have developed that skill, but they also have developed certain types of strength with the muscles in their long position to create more of a slingshot-like effect, firing muscles very, very rapidly out of long positions that create this slingshot effect as a result of pitching, even though they can't lift anywhere near 2,000 pounds. So, it's, so yes, I mean, it's, do these baseball players, could they benefit from deadlifting a little more or benching a little more? Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm. But, where should we draw that line?
Yeah. And so, like, the numbers that you're talking about are like world-class numbers. I mean, those are,
yes.
You get into 2,000, like that's world-class. Those are like power lifters specifically, but like going into, more athletes. So like, let's just say, athletes that are, athletic, but very strong as well. And so like, I'm kind of thinking about some people that you've probably met at our facility, over the years. And like, as you were doing that, we have a record board as well up at our facility. And, I kind of got away from it for a few years because I noticed guys were trying, all of their workouts were more geared toward, they were trying to make it more about, setting that record on the record board. And although I love the competition, ultimately, like, we're not going to, risk your career, based on you setting a deadlift record at ELP. But like, even some of these people that, and honestly, they probably listen to our show. I mean, some of their totals, I mean, these are, college, age guys ish, 1,300 to 1,500 pounds. And I mean, that's a huge total for, a baseball player, right? I mean, you're looking at like roughly a 500-pound deadlift, about a 400 to 500 pound squat, a 300+ pound bench press. Like, those are big totals.
Right.
But, at what point does strength not carry over into that sport anymore? I think that's ultimately a question that I always have found very fascinating.
Absolutely. And actually, there's a strength coach out there from the former Soviet Union. I believe he's now in Canada, Bondarchuk, Anatoly Bondarchuk, who literally, his books are all written on these various exercises and how they carry over to whatever sport. Hammer throw. He was a hammer throw coach, by the way. But shot put, sprinting, 100 meters. At what point does a heavier squat no longer carry over to a better sprint? At what point does a better bench press no longer carry over to a better shot put? I mean, things like this. And then if they don't, then how else can we improve? Well, you can improve your jumps. You can improve shorter sprints. You can improve. And these things, there's some things that still carry over better once a person has achieved a certain level of strength to a particular athlete's sport.
Sure. So, and with some of our programming and things like that at ELP, like I'll admit, like I go back and forth a little bit. And I do think, it's a lot of it is just as a coach meeting the needs of the athlete as well. And quite frankly, I'll go on record and saying that a lot of these, young high school guys that are coming in, they're completely different than the guys of 8 to 10 years ago. I mean, there's no testosterone flow and there's no competitive edge there. They're burned out, too much blue light. They're exhausted, whatever. So I'll get them under the bar just to get them, kind of get some testosterone flowing, some competitive flowing. So I'll kind of ebb and flow, with, my programs and get, get them in the lifts a little bit more. But I think if you're, more advanced coaches know this, but if you're a younger coach coming up listening to this, pick the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to selecting strength work to help prepare the athletes, right? And so the lowest hanging fruit would typically be the beginning progressions of, a deadlift, of a bench. Quite frankly, I don't squat much, but, a box squat, all right? I do like to kind of west side box squat, a little bit, although I don't put a ton of emphasis on it by any means, and slowly progress and build it, from there. But we mix stuff a lot, right? We mix everything from ultra fit Evo sport to, a little bit of lifting to go to theory. Like we kind of blend all of it together because I don't believe in sport specific movement. It's a marketing term. I just don't agree with it. Like anybody can rotate and throw a ball. Like it just is what it is. Like, so oblique twists are the same thing. Like, so it's getting into a whole other conversation, but where I'm headed with that is like I blend that because ultimately in sport, it's about being able to move fluidly and efficiently, right? At the end of the day, if you throw 95 miles an hour, no coach gives a shit how much you squat. Like, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, let's see. We had 2 guys drafted this year in the MLB draft alone. One was a high schooler. And I think, I don't even know how many guys we've had drafted out of high school at this point. I think at least out of high school, at least 6 maybe, I guess. I don't know. And at least from my standpoint, I really don't know of any scout or anybody that ever asked me, maybe they asked the parent or the coach, but not me, how much, they squat or deadlift. And, oh man, maybe if he benches, 225 for reps, then yeah, we'll take him in the first round.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't happen. Exactly.
No, I hadn't seen that, I don't think.
No,
maybe they cut me out because they know that's a hot button issue with me, but I don't know.
Right.
Okay. So all right. Cause I want to go into, a little bit deeper side of this, but let's talk about the physical component a little bit more, because I do think a big chunk of our audience are either athletes listening to this or, or younger coaches coming up. And that's kind of our goal, right? To share our experiences and stuff. So,
right.
How do you, blend the two, yet separate it? How do you strength train, but yet still prepare the athlete for competition?
Well, that's a good question, because we strength train almost all of our athletes.
That's why I'm the host of the show, bro, because I got great questions.
Yes, you do. And that's because you have, but we strength train with a lot of length, meaning, think of anybody who's ever seen an ISO Extreme push-up.
Okay.
Anybody who's ever seen an ISO Extreme rear leg, one-legged squat. Anybody who's ever seen an ISO Extreme lunge with both feet elevated or just 1 foot elevated. Okay. That the muscles get put in these tremendous lengths, and yet we're asking the body to strengthen in these positions that aren't necessarily always very strong. And we could take athletes at any level, put them in a rear leg elevated lunge or rear leg elevated 1 leg squat, whatever you want to call it, and most of them are going to fail within the first 30 seconds because they can't handle.
You're right. I agree with you, and so I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Yep.
I agree with you 100%, but parents and coaches don't see it that way. They think strength is how much you can lift under a bar.
And that is a measure. Okay. That is a measure. But
A measure.
it is
Yes.
a measure. Yes, that is a measure of strength. How much you lift, how much you bench, you squat, you deadlift, you power clean, you whatever. Yeah, that's absolutely a measure. But what is it you want? Do you want to be able to lift more weight, or do you want to be able to, if you're a pitcher, get hitters out? What do you want? I mean, I don't know that. I can't answer that
But
question.
so, Chris, like I see Nick Chubb and
Yep.
Saquon Barkley, squatting 600 pounds on their Instagram and their NFL running backs and great at what they do. Shouldn't my kid be able to do that too at some point?
Well, and maybe they will. You don't know. Maybe they will.
But so
That
why don't we
said-
start doing that right now? So they're in high school. Why don't we start squatting them right now? Why are you wanting to do all this crazy ISO extreme bullshit stuff? That doesn't make sense.
Okay, so let's take the Nick Chubbs and let's take the Saquon Barkleys of the world, and let's test them in various things. Like let's test them in ISO extremes. I bet you they would be very strong in exercises like ISO extremes. Now that said, yes, can they lift the house? Obviously, obviously they can. But at the same time, is that what makes them great? Would they be just as good if they squatted 500? Maybe. I don't know. Would they be better if they squat 700? Maybe. I don't know. That said, they have advanced. Their tissues have gotten healthy enough. They've developed enough. They've gotten away from all that blue light enough to where they can handle the higher and higher loads that also help their performance. You've got to remember, if you're a high school kid, there's a good chance you're not squatting 600 pounds without injuring yourself. All right? That's very unlikely.
No, but there was a kid that actually went, like, I saw on Twitter a couple weeks ago, like, and he did, like, kid legit had like 550 or 600, and it was a perfect squat. I was like, damn, dude. Like, so good for you, whoever you are, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
anyways.
And that's fantastic, and that's a freak of the world, and good for him. At the same time, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that he's the best football player.
Right,
He
and I
might
agree
be.
with
Maybe he is. Maybe he is. I don't.
Okay,
I don't
so
really know.
all right, so I'm playing dad here, right? Like, all right,
Yep.
so I understand what you're saying here, Chris. Like, okay, Nick Chubb, he squats that much, and he could maybe hold this, extreme isometric thing you talk about, but he's probably good at holding that iso extreme thing because he can squat that much. Like
That
probably
would,
not the other way around, right?
yeah, that would absolutely not be true, because we've seen numerous people. I mean, that's one thing that the world is full of is people who can lift a lot of weight that can't play. Okay, yes, there are people who can lift that can play, and chances are the Nick Chubbs, and you've also got the Saquon Barkleys of the world. Yeah, they are very, very, very good athletes, excellent running backs. Oh yeah, and they're also exceptionally strong. But there's a lot of exceptionally strong people. I just listed some, mentioned a few that would top those numbers. They would get destroyed if they stepped out on a football field. So clearly, it's not just strength that makes them good. There's other qualities. Strength at length, being strong with muscles turning on and off at proper times. So these people, Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb, can turn their muscles on and off, very rapidly and very powerfully. Number two, at very good ranges of motion. Okay, so they have excellent ranges of motion. And three, the things that John, you and I have not even started discussing yet, and that is their mindset. Okay, these are hard workers. They're not just strength athletes. If all they did was strength train and that's all they did, what do you think would happen to their performance on the football field? They would absolutely just tank. So is strength an important quality? Absolutely, it's an important quality. But it's got to be the right kind. It's got to be the right kind. Can squatting heavy be a part of that right kind? Yeah, of course it can. But is it the only kind? Nope. In fact, it might be low tier. It might be I squat just because I want to impress, you know, I want to impress a scout or something. But is that going to help me play better? Yeah, don't know. I can think of a
Right.
lot of other types of strength that would help even more.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I think you answered that really well. And I think as coaches, like for those of us who have been in this industry a while, we have all experienced this to some level. You know, and your new coaches, like this inevitably is going to come up for you, and we want to help prepare you for that, right?
Right.
Like, you know, I think we're some of the first people out there really putting this info out here about, you know, ISOs and drops and things like that. You know, I mean, I know there's some other people, but like as far as, you know, in relation to the systems and structures and stuff, you know, that were built. And so you're inevitably going to come across that question, guys. And so understand that sometimes we may have to do something just because that's what, you know, the parent or the high school coach or whatever deems is important. And ultimately it's their team. Now, if they allow you to be able to do it, what it is, you know, is, you know, what you need to do, then great. Then I want your job.
Yeah.
you know, you know,
No
but
kidding.
yeah, strength at length, right? I mean, and so that's big. And so that leads into kind of the other element of that is like your preparation also involves, right? Like training all the physical properties. So like range of motion, fluidity, movement, you know, explosiveness, reactiveness, right? All these different things. And so it's not just strength training that is, you know, the end all be all. And I feel like this is getting worse out there. Like the amount of people that I can think of just in the last like month or two that have come into my facility where, you know, these kids are they're bodybuilding. Like that's all they're doing just because that's what they see on TikTok constantly. It's just, it's these, I even know baseball coaches here in the local area that are still training guys based on bodybuilding type of splits. It's like, what the hell do we have to do to get people here to wake up and understand, like, you're not a bodybuilder or a powerlifter, you're an athlete. It is our job as coaches to be able to know the difference and be able to stimulate the kids the right way and to develop them the right way. Now, don't get me wrong, every once in a while we'll have an arm farm day, sure, because, you know, we're going to be meatheads a little bit, right?
Right.
And there's a time and place, you know, to have some fun and just get after it, but ultimately we got to train for what the sport dictates, right? And that's strength at length.
Yeah. Well, you know, and another thing too, I want to go back to what you mentioned, like an altitude drop or
Yeah.
whatever one of us did. Anyhow, I want you to think about dropping from landing from a 24-inch box. All right. Just think about
Yep.
that. And there's numbers out there. You cannot put enough weight on that person's back to equal what they are landing with if they are landing from a 24-inch box. Now, granted, that force that they're landing with is instantaneous and not, you know, throughout the full range of motion necessarily. But we're talking about the instantaneous force. You cannot put that much weight on a person's back. It couldn't happen. So things like altitude drops, and that, by the way, that's one reason why you see the Dr. J's of the world, you see the Jay Schroeders of the world. That's why you see some of our other guests that we've had on, Dan Fichters of the world. They don't do 20, 30 of those. They do 100. You know, they do up to
Absolutely.
300.
We do too, yeah.
Yeah, it's hundreds of these reps because that's what the demands, going back to what you said a second ago, John, the demands of the sport are not 30 reps or 20 reps or whatever. Chances are it's going to be hundreds of reps. So prepare. Once again.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it was Verkov-Shansky that was originally like, hey, you know, 4 sets of, 10 twice a week or 40 jumps twice a week or whatever it was.
Yes.
You know, yeah, and maybe when they're first starting out, when they're, little and learn how to do it or something, okay, sure, but again, now you're getting into a whole other argument of like, well, your body didn't know the difference. Like when you decided when you were a kid to, climb to the roof of a fort and jump off and land, like were you going to say, hey, I'm going to do, 4 sets of 10 on this and that's it.
Right.
I was going to get hurt. Like, no, your body didn't know the difference. But let's go back to that altitude drop thing.
Yep.
That's a really good statement and a good analogy here because it's actually something that I saw this week, right? So, okay, the difference between strength training and preparing for the sport, right? So what is that drop, all right? So you're jumping off a box. Well, your brain is going to perceive this as a threat, right? Like I'm falling. I need to catch myself and stabilize and protect, right? And so it challenges your system to immediately turn on and respond to protect you. Does that kind of sound like something that you might do in sport? Maybe. Like if an 85, 90 mile an hour fastball is coming at your head in, 8th grade, 9th grade, right? You feel like maybe you got to turn on to adjust to that? Makes sense? Guys, you understand where we're coming from, right? And it's funny because I used to have guys jumping off cages in here, like cages, like powerlift, the racks, like they'll jump off of those and land, right? I can't get kids right now to jump off of a 12-inch box. They're literally afraid. They're scared to do it. And these are high school athletes. They're scared. Right. So if you're scared to do that, then don't you think that maybe learning how to absorb that force and train your body to be able to protect and respond in times of emergency is more important than how much you damn squat or how much you power clean?
Right.
That is training for sport right there.
Yes.
Being able to react and respond.
Right. React, respond, turn muscles on and off quickly, not at high levels.
Yes.
Not just, again, going back to just a traditional bench press or deadlift or squat. You might have all day to complete that rep. In sport, you don't. You don't have all day. You have sometimes hundredths of a second to react, and that's what you got. So
yeah, instead of how much you freaking power clean. But yeah, so I mean, okay, that's kind of, I guess, the essence there of, the difference. But it goes a lot. Well, I mean, we've already kind of touched on it a little bit, right? Like getting more into, kind of the sport-specific stuff versus kind of the elements of pipes, right? Like there's a much greater, component to this.
Right.
Like the pipe side of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, agreed.
Agreed. And by the way, I don't want to bring up his name just yet because John and I have recorded a couple of what's probably going to be 3 podcasts with a guest. I think you guys are going to love.
Yes.
I mean, it was incredible interviews. I saw him post on one of his Instagram pages. Basically, picture standing up, falling into a push-up position. Okay, and he did it for like an hour. Okay,
bro, what are you doing? I saw you. Yes.
I was like, okay, this is freak show. All right. I want to see. Don't misunderstand. I mean, again, 600-pound bench press is phenomenal. Go try that.
Yeah.
That's where cool. That is more than just you think that's a lot more than purely physical. Okay, that is everything pipes, intellectual, psychological, emotional, spiritual. That's everything engaged, just like you should if you are an athlete and you're in the middle of a game. You're in the middle, like you're the pitcher. And you're like, okay, guess what? You win or lose the championship game, it's on you, man. And guess what? You better be, you better be up for the challenge. And if you're not, you're going to blame it on a lack of bench press strength.
Right. Yeah.
Nope. Chances are it's on one of these other components.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very easy to say, oh, you got hurt, because you were weak. Maybe.
Right.
I imagine it's probably related to some other things as well, right? So, like, that's kind of what I was talking about with the drops, right? Like, the intellectual, the psychological, the emotional component to this. And I think this is an area in sport right now that needs the most work. I think we are facing right now a generation of kids through no fault of their own per se, a generation that doesn't know how their body even operates. They're not in touch with the emotional side. They're not in touch with the the intellectual or psychological side because there's so much information out there constantly that you basically just become numb to it, right? And they can't process that.
Right.
And so I think as coaches, even though you probably don't get this type of information in any courses, whether you got your, certification out of a cereal box or you spent a week at, wherever, like there's not enough information available for coaches to help build that emotional, intellectual, psychological side of it, because I think that is where things are going to fail here in the next, 5 years or so. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Ultimately, let's face it. It probably took someone like a Jay Schroeder, and go back and listen to episode 7 if you want to hear his backstory. but it probably took someone to undergo an injury like he had to overcome it in order to fully grasp the whole pipes process. Okay, the whole pipe scenario. Okay, all these components working together. And the best thing I can do when I'm talking to a healthy athlete is I gotta picture a scenario where everything is riding on you. Okay, I mean a real scenario. Okay, and everything is riding on you. What happens? That's because that's the best thing they can relate to. Most of the kids I train, they can't relate to the end. All right, they can't. They can't relate to that. They don't have a concept of the end, but they can relate to being in that pressure-packed situation, and they can relate to that in a sport or in a game somewhere. So that's usually what I have to do in order to put yourself in that. I mean, you've got to put yourself in that. That's the same level of focus I want here, doing whatever. Whether it be those altitude drops, or whether it be that iso extreme lunge, whether it be, it doesn't matter. By the way, this is all right. I'm telling on myself here, but for some reason on the exercise of sissy squat, if anybody out there has ever tried an iso extreme sissy squat for 5 minutes, and how you can do that is beyond me. I cannot get that there on that exercise. That's crazy to me. But
nope, can't say I've ever tried.
That is nuts. So that's one of those I have. Is there
somebody out there that's done it?
Don't know, but I'm working toward it. So
I mean, I can do sissy squats.
Me too.
I can't hold it for 5 minutes though.
Yeah, this is an ISO. It's hard to do, but
all right. Anyway, maybe challenge accepted then.
All right, excellent.
But yeah. So, I lost my train of thought there. I had something that I wanted to say, kind of on that emotional side of it, to drive that home more. And it's the times have changed, right? Like we are not training athletes in the same generation that we were, 10, 20 years ago. Things are different now. And I truly believe that it is the de-evolution, but it's also the emotional and mental component. And so that is really where we have got to be able as coaches to step in and train these athletes mentally and emotionally to be prepared to step onto the field, because from the time that they're, 2 to 3 years old, they're told what to do every second of the day, right? And then their wants and desires come from fake bullshit on a highlight reel on Instagram and TikTok, and they're living their life of desires based on something that's not even true. It's not even real. What you see on Instagram is just a highlight reel, TikTok, highlight reel, right? It's not real life. And so when they experience real life on the field, they don't know what to do. They can't respond, and the body breaks down, right? And so like the days of, training, 5 days a week of just grinding and gassers and all that stuff, like trying to make you mentally tough. It's not even about being mentally tough anymore.
Right.
Like that generation had a foundation. This generation doesn't. And our generation of coaches has to be able to step in to help that. And that's where I think things are headed and where we need to improve, right? So like, things like drops, right? Like being able to turn on, stabilize, imagery, visualization. Visualize what you're trying to accomplish, right? Jay talks about it all the time, that clear picture, right?
Right. And again, I mean, we just have to kind of give them, kind of guide them with the picture that they can relate to, is what I found. Again, just not in the sense that they can't visualize, as Jay would say, the end. I mean, they're just that doesn't exist to them. So there's, you have to give them something that they can relate to.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. There is no in for a lot of them,
Right.
And that's one of the first things that we do here at ELP, at least, is, we have a goal board up on the wall. And one of the things that I actually do, and a young coach, I mean, you can take this or leave it. I mean, I can't say it's perfect, but, it works sometimes. Is like, if I'm doing an eval with a kid and a family, one of the first things I'll ask them is like, what are your goals? Like, why are you here? Oh, I want to get faster, stronger. Okay, cool. Everybody says that. Like,
Yep.
why are you here? And I'll ask it again, and I'll see if there's a response. Well, I need to get I need to improve my 60. Okay, so I'm clearly getting the idea that you have no idea why you're here. You're here because Dad drug you here. All right, fine. I don't say that, or I probably wouldn't be in business. But
Right.
But then it's okay. Let's have something tangible, right? Like, what are your short-term goals? And then what are your long-term goals? And if they can't answer that, then I tell them, all right, look, you need to think about this. And if we're going to be the right fit, when you come in on day one, you need to have something tangible and at least put it up on the goal board. And that is kind of, to me, at least the first step in developing that picture, right? Getting them to think a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, giving them and something out there for other people to see as well. If they, because there's like, okay, there's a little more accountability. So yeah,
And don't get me wrong, it makes some people very uncomfortable. Like I've lost sales because of it. I've lost a ton of them, but morally, I know that I'm doing the right thing there. Like the intent is real. The intent is to help the kid, right? And so yeah, I've lost sales, but it's also helped a lot of people as well.
right.
And
There's a good chance.
Go ahead.
I know. I was just going to say, chances are, then those people who you lost probably would never have stayed in the first place. So
Yeah, right, exactly.
Short term.
So, I mean, the answer to the question of the difference between strength training versus preparing an athlete for performance, I mean, it's got 50 different roads to it, right? I mean, there's so many different elements there that, could be addressed. I think we talked about, the physical side of it, right? Like, okay, sure, if you want to bench, squat, deadlift, fine. It's usually less than 20% of my programming.
Same.
Yep, less than 20, all right? Maybe I hit an assistance exercise, one or two of those, maybe, just a little, extra back work or something, just whatever, something, okay? So now we're at maybe, 35, maybe 40% of the program. And then the rest of the program is all more human movement, absorbing, producing force based. And, power, agility, explosiveness, real life scenarios, right? Turning on and off. You know? That's how I program, and that's how I think we should properly prepare an athlete in the physical component.
Yep. And by the way, I want to go back just very, very quickly to those the Saquon Barkley example you gave us, 600 pounds. If Saquon, and I want to put this out there for someone, for dads out there to think about. If Saquon Barkley squatted 600 pounds and does all the other stuff that he does, we know his level, right? We know how good he is. What if all he does is squat so that he squats 600 pounds? What happens? Is it, I will tell you right now, the same thing will happen with any athletes out there. We see it time after time. We train them. They go into their school workouts. They're, top 30% typically in their strength if they've trained with me for a significant amount of time. But they actually increase their strength in the weight room faster than everybody. So if your goal is still to improve your strength, your weight room numbers, you still ought to train like John, like you and I are talking about, because guess what? Weight room numbers still go up faster than any other way.
Yep.
And I've seen it time after time after time. It just doesn't do it in my weight room. It does it in somebody else's.
Yeah.
So,
so our competition, if you're listening to this, we're giving you the answers right here.
Right.
Like, and there's plenty of athletes to go around. So if you're a competitor, take what I'm telling you and utilize it.
Yes.
Take what Chris and utilize it, because we're doing the right thing for the kids. And
Right.
that's what's important. There's enough kids to go around for everybody.
Yep.
You get strong in the ISO lunge, I guarantee you your squat and stuff goes up. I guarantee it.
Or
No
at least
doubt.
your potential. At least your potential does.
Yep.
You start. Yeah. Exactly. So.
Yep. So yeah, and then so that's kind of the difference between the strength training and preparing for performance. And then we touched on the intellectual and the emotional component to it, right? Like, you've mentally got to be engaged, and that is really where I think all of us need to improve. and myself included.
Yes.
Another thing that I do, I did years ago, and I got away from it a little bit, but I'm getting back to it, is I require my athletes to read the book Relentless by Tim Grover. I don't, as far as, Tim Grover, if you don't know who Tim Grover is, he's, Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, strength coach. My opinions on him as a strength coach, different conversation, okay? But as far as a mental guru, the guy is genius. He's brilliant, the best of the best. I encourage you to read Relentless. If you have not read it, you need to read it, because it's just one of those things that helps you kind of get that mindset going in the right direction, right?
Good, yeah.
And that's what sport preparation is about.
Good recommendation, yes.
Well, all right, you got anything else you want to add?
I think that's it. To kind of talk that part to hopefully we gave somebody a good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the show, guys. Pay your dues if you liked it. Pay your dues. If you got any questions on it, let us know. We'll dig into this a little bit more. So appreciate you guys listening. Love you guys. Take care.
You guys.